The information presented in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not meant to be a substitute for clinical mental health treatment. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988 or head to your nearest emergency room. Welcome to the Black People Die by Suicide 2 podcast, where we discuss all things mental health with an emphasis on suicide in the Black community. I'm your co-host, Jordan.
And I am your co-host, T-Kea.
If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. We're so glad that you all found our podcast. So thank you for watching and listening. If you are coming back for another episode, we really appreciate your continued support. And we hope that you're getting something beneficial out of the conversation. We know it's not something that we as Black people often talk about. So we're glad to open up the floor and I guess model how you can have some of these conversations about such a difficult topic like suicide. So we appreciate y'all coming on board with us for this. We love it. We love it. You know, this is something T-Kea and I have been through personally. Honestly, I'm still going through it, but that's for another episode. But we're just really glad that you all continue to keep coming back and listening and watching. So as per usual, before we get started on today's topic, we like to do a check-in and we also rate our psychological fortitude. So with the check-in, we're trying to give a name to what it is that we're feeling, because oftentimes we say we're fine and we're good, but that's not really how we feel. And then for psychological fortitude, that is coined by the esteemed Dr. Rita Walker. So our psychological fortitude is our ability to be self-aware on how we are doing mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. So if you're at a 0, you're at your lowest. So you basically have like no desire to go on with life. If you're at a 10, you are thriving, you're doing well, nothing's going to stop you. And so your psychological fortitude will change from day to day, week to week, etc. But just it's a good measure of how you're doing at that moment. You can take inventory of your feelings. And also will help you determine if you need a little bit of support for yourself, what other people can do to help you, etc. So T-Kea, if you want to check in and let people know how you're doing and then also give your psychological fortitude score.
Yes. So today I'm going to give myself a good, well, you asked how I was feeling, then my PF. I'll give my PF first. So I'm going to say I'm about a good 7.5, which is pretty good. Well, Dr. Walker says it's best to be at an 8 or above. I'm working on it. But I think I'm excited, which it will have to be another podcast episode. But y'all, I get to see Jordan. We've been on a little break, so I feel like seeing her has like lifted my mood. And I'm excited about today's topic and the guest. So I feel like that has lifted my mood. So yeah, I would say a 7.5. And overall, how I'm feeling, I have been dealing with lots of stress, but despite the stress, I have been doing my best to manage well. And I know we'll talk about that in the self-care segment. So that's how I'm feeling. Jordan.
Oh boy, my turn. Out of 10, I'm probably a good 6 today. And you know what? I'll take that. I'll have to update you all on another episode with what's been going on with me, and it's been a lot. But I do want you to know that if you are currently struggling with your mental health, or you know someone who is currently struggling with their mental health, I'm right there with you. Just to give you a little preview, I'm right there with you. As far as how I'm feeling today, I'm actually feeling pretty hopeful. I had a good day today so far, and I'm looking forward to continuing to improve in my mental health journey. Even though T-Kea and I have been through this, we still experience some relapses from time to time. So we're also still very much in the midst of our recovery, even as we're talking to you now. And again, I'll give you all a little update about that in the future. But for now, I want to introduce you all to our wonderful guest who T-Kea and I were so excited to talk to today. So we are joined by Tramaine EL-Amin. She's Vice President of Mental Health First Aid at the National Council for Mental Wellbeing. In this role, she leads the strategic growth of a mental health social enterprise in the United States. As a certified national trainer and social impact executive, Tramaine has contributed to more than 3 million individuals being equipped to recognize signs and symptoms related to mental health, substance use, and suicide across the country. Tramaine, how are you doing today?
Listen, I am so excited. This has been a long journey to sit in this seat to talk to you both. I mean, we have been talking about this for quite some time, and I am over the moon to be joining you this afternoon, and so excited about our conversation because this is just a topic I could talk about all day, every day.
Oh, I was gonna say, and you have to give us your PF. Where are you? Scale 0 to
Yes,
10.
yes, my PF. I would say I'm at an 8.5. I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I think I'm at hit a good stride. Now, if you were talking to me a couple weeks ago, we might be at another number, but we're not going to talk about that. We are evolved into this place today, and so I will say that PF approach is so resonant for me. A lot of times we as helpers, those that are doing work, those that are doing what you are doing day to day, you forget to check in with yourself sometimes. And so it's a great
Mhm.
reminder. So thanks for that.
Yes. Yes, I'm excited. Were you going to say something, Jordan?
Go ahead.
No, I was ready to dive into the questions. So I know Jordan gave a wonderful introduction about you, but is there something maybe that we missed? Because we like, tell us about yourself. And you're probably like, what do you want to know? Well, I think one of the things, like, how did you even transition into like mental health in terms of like public health work? What was your journey like to getting there? And then we could talk about your work at the National Council.
Yeah. So I think that I always talk about the fact that, and I'm sure you all have this experience, it's our personal experiences that bring us to the work that we get to do. And I always say get to do
Hmm.
because a lot of folks might be feeling like, I have to do the things I do to pay the bills, to do this, to do that. So I always look at it as a privilege to get to do something that aligns with something that is so resonant with me on a personal level. And so I think it's been not only my just my how I grew up, my environment, my experiences growing up kind of pointed me in a direction to be working in the people space, if you will, and trying to figure out specifically around mental health. And I did undergrad in psychology, but also felt that there were structural challenges that I saw that really needed to be addressed in how our systems kind of operated around mental health. And so got really interested in the that side of the mental health landscape from an administration perspective. But it really was that personal connection to my own journey, my own experiences around mental health and well being, and that of my family and my community. I think that those three, and that's why I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk to you all today, because it really was what wasn't talked about that really got me interested in now why won't we talk about this and so I think that's how I got started is just being curious about that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, Jordan. I'm sorry I cut you off. I'm glad that you brought that up because some people, when they think about like mental health, and I know we'll talk about what you do at the National Council. Sometimes people think in order to make an impact, and Jordan knows she gonna probably laugh when I say this. Like we always feel like we have to do direct work like as a
Oh,
therapist or working like one on one, right? But I try to get Jordan all the time to open her mind up and say, when you're talking about like public health work or the administrative side or the kind of expanding and saying like there's like we're helping people just by having the podcast, but we're not providing therapy right now.
Hmm.
Um, and so I love that because it also opens up for maybe people who are younger and are listening and like I want to do mental health, but I don't know if I want to be a therapist or a psychiatrist. Maybe that can look different. So you're also exposing people to different ways to be in mental health.
Yeah, and what aligns with what you are, what's at your core, what drives you. I like order, I like structure, I like figuring out what's wrong with something and how do we address that. And so when you know that that's kind of what you like, and don't let me be clear, there was not a linear kind of path. Oh, I'm going to do administration. It is the path that came to me as I took
Mm-hmm.
one step and then another and
Mm-hmm.
another. And I say that because a lot of times we also think that we have to say, oh, I want to go do this thing. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And we're not going to talk about how old I am, but I'm still, at my big age trying to think through, what does that mean? How do I continue? And I just do the work I get to do. And I love because it resonates with myself and the community I get to serve.
You know what? I'm really excited about this episode, and I'm so glad that we have you on because the work that your organization is doing with mental health first aid is so important. For those of you who are listening and watching and don't know, T-Kea is a trainer for mental health first aid. I am a certified mental health first aider, woo woo, for adults and youth. So I'm excited about that. How long have I been certified? Like 2019, maybe. T-Kea was my initial trainer. She's been my trainer every time. Shout out to her.
Yes, before we had the virtual curriculum,
Mhm.
we did it in person, and that's when we first did it. Yes, when everything was, we had to do papers, remember, like hard.
Yes.
Yeah, that was pre-pandemic.
Isn't it something how all of that gets accelerated once we, like, when we're in a place where it's like, okay, how do we pivot? How do we figure out, how to make sure that this critical information is there? And yes, I hard pass on the paper. I'm with you, T-Kea. I love this digital age that we're in where we can still have that conversation. And I'm so excited that you are an instructor. And Jordan, listen, being a first aider, you get to see, I'm sure you use that information all the time in all the work that you all do. So I'm just grateful that y'all are connected. We are part of the community around mental health
Yes.
first aid. That's awesome.
Yes. So your role, Tramaine, as Vice President for Mental Health First Aid is pivotal in promoting mental health awareness, and that is the truth. Can you share how the program has evolved since you first joined and the impact it's had on the communities that it's been helping across the United States?
Sure. So mental health first aid was brought to the US in 2008 from Australia, but it was adapted for our context here in the US over time and for multiple communities, right? We have adult mental health first aid. We've got something for the folks that are supporting young people that are middle school or high school. We've also have a program for teens that's for those in ninth to 12th grade. And so that content was created but then adapted to the local context. And that's going to be important because I think we're going to talk a little bit about how we continue to evolve even that adaptation, especially for communities of color, specifically for Black communities as well. And so I think it's important for us to acknowledge that it's an evidence based program. There's a ton of research, more than 80 studies done on the program. And globally, it's global, it's in more than 30 countries. But here in the US, out of the almost, I think it's a little over 5, almost 6 million people trained globally, 3.5 million of those have been trained in the US. And so it's grown from 70,000 to when I first started to now over 3.5 million. And I'm so glad y'all are among the number making that happen. But also, it's been such a really a real honor and a privilege to watch communities take something and make it work for themselves. And I think that's the power of a localized program that is not just about national council kind of distributing the program nationally. It is a national and really global program that's being implemented at the community level by community members, and specifically making sure that resources that resonate with the audience you're standing in front of are actually provided real time, that folks know where to go, and that those trusted people in the community are the ones who are delivering the content. And so I think that's what I've seen happen. I saw it happen when I worked in Philadelphia, where I started being engaged with the program as an instructor myself. So I feel you, T-Kea. Like I said, it used to be 12 hours, okay? 12 hours of content, not just one day of content, 2 days. So we were able to grow the program based on the amazing work of community members all across the country.
Now, listen, I tell everybody about mental health first aid. I do. People talk about mental health to me. I'm like, do you want to take mental health first aid? Because I know someone who teaches it. Like, send me an email and I can send you her email and I can get y'all connected. I love mental health first aid. I appreciate everything that your organization is doing to help bring awareness for mental health. Um, it's definitely a program I believe in. It's a program that I'm going to continue to get certified in. So I'm really excited that it's had such a positive impact on pretty much everyone who's taken it. And I think it's a powerful thing that there's that many mental health first aiders out there. Because imagine all the people they could potentially help. It's just magnified. So I'm excited.
Oh, you're not alone. I'm excited too. I really am. Like if you think about it, there's 26,000 instructors that have been out there and being trained, and folks like T-Kea, folks like you, Jordan, who are out just like, well, I don't even know how to start this conversation. What do I do? And they're trying to figure out where's the best way. What's the wording? How do I not feel like, oh, this thing in my stomach when I want to ask and I know something ain't right with my friend, right? I'm very concerned about them, but I don't know how to even approach that conversation. And that's what we want to do. We want to normalize the conversation, decrease stigma, but also give people the tools to feel comfortable enough to do something versus just ignoring that feeling, that gut feeling that something is going on with someone they care about.
Yes, love it because my mom is also a mental health first aider. She took one of my courses.
Okay, Mom.
Yes, she learns. Oh, you met my mom too. It's at the summit. Yeah, she talked about how she's learned so much and now she's always telling like people at her job or just people that she know like about just overall mental health and she knows best ways to like support me or if someone else is struggling. Like it has been amazing just overall in terms of my family and also my aunt is also certified because she had took the training as well. So a lot of people that I have close relationships with, I'm like, go ahead and get certified because I always tell them, add it on your resume. It looks great.
Why not? Why not? I love it. And I love that it's a family affair. That's the best. I love it.
Because I know she's listening. Mom, I'm so proud of you for being certified.
I love it.
So my question that I wanted to ask as it relates to, of course, mental health stigma in terms of it being a barrier for many communities, especially, Black communities. Um, I, well, I'm gonna let you answer, even though I probably know the answer.
Because you're an instructor, you saying? Is that what you're saying?
Right, but I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let you answer it. How does mental health first aid address the issue, like particularly in marginalized and underserved populations? Because of course, it looks different. People who may not be in those populations.
Absolutely. A couple ways. I will say that you asked me a question about, how has mental health first aid grown over time in the time that I've been, connected. There's so many people. First of all, we had 3 staff members when I got there that were focused specifically on mental health first aid. Now we have almost 80 staff members that are focused on mental health first aid. And I say that is because that's the engine that's making sure that this is available. And so we have a phenomenal staff. I love working with every human that I work with. They're just amazing. The reason I mention that is because those team members are representative of the communities they're in, right? They reflect what the U.S. looks like. They reflect all walks of life, all places and spaces and identities, and so many other aspects of who we are as humans. And I think it's important for me to say that because that's why we can reflect in the content what it is that different experiences that folks might have, how it shows up. Yes, the statistics and the data that demonstrate that youth suicide is on the rise, unfortunately, among Black youth. That demonstrates that for our other communities of color specifically, they are also experiencing mental health challenges at an alarming rate. We were able to then revise our content in 2020. Even before that, we had cultural considerations that went alongside the content, but we really started to embed it throughout, and started to ensure that our instructors are equipped to mention statistics, information, and embed that content that really is going to resonate with the individuals that they're in front of. So that might mean mentioning the fact that for um, uh, gender individuals who are experiencing mental health challenges that might be part of an LGBTQ plus community are also impacted differently. Or if individuals who are coming from places and spaces where they don't feel that they are being served by the communities they live within, that they're experiencing discrimination, they're experiencing racism, all those kinds of things are actually places and spaces where we want to have the conversation in the room. And we want to equip instructors to really be able to have that dialogue, so that they feel comfortable and that the people in the room also feel comfortable. So it's not necessarily this prescriptive way of, okay, this program for this group and that program for that group. It's about making sure that those cultural considerations are baked throughout the content and that there's flexibility to be able to deliver it in a way that resonates.
Have you experienced any challenges, or I guess what kind of strategies have been the most effective for you in reaching out to those diverse communities? Especially, again, we as Black people, y'all, we keep saying this, but it's true. Mental health is not something that we talk about often, definitely not suicide, but we do have some of the fastest growing suicide rates right now. And it's important that we do open up the conversation because we could potentially help save lives. And programs like mental health first aid definitely positively impact in that way. So, are there any strategies that you found to be helpful in kind of getting into diverse communities or communities that may be a little bit reluctant to talk about mental health?
Yes. I'm trying to think of one example. Because listen, we only have an hour. I can go on for 2 days about this one, just because I think for me, when I first took mental health first aid, that was one of the things that I was like, okay, I know this information is needed, but how can it resonate with my faith community specifically? That's where I was focused initially. And then it was my community that I lived in and the ones that I was a part of, the groups and the individuals that I was connected to, because I knew this was a conversation we weren't having, right? Not on a day to day basis. We just weren't having that dialogue. Um, and so I think that for what we've been able to do at National Council is identify philanthropic opportunities to really support communities, because typically it is an opportunity that folks may not be able to take advantage of. The certification is a certification, it's good for 3 years. And it's not just training, it really is. We're certifying, just like we would for CPR or first aid, that you have the skills to really support someone and feel comfortable doing so at a specific place or a level, if you will. And so that means that we want to increase access. Well, access means that we need resources. Well, how do we get resources? We identify those philanthropic opportunities to then give back, and open up opportunities for the community, or point folks towards those opportunities that we identify, so that communities that might not have access are able to get access. We also partner with a number of organizations that are specifically aligned to marginalized communities. That includes organizations like the African American Center of Excellence at Morehouse School of Medicine, which we work with them to do a number of initiatives. There's been all our work in health equity and working with the CDC or SAMHSA to really support a number of those initiatives as well, that allow more equity to be embedded not only in our content and the way that we approach, but making sure that communities are getting the word, that there's funding available at states and at the federal level available for communities to apply and support those endeavors within marginalized communities. And so I think that there's been several strategies that have been successful. I think that there's always going to be a challenge. Always going to be a challenge because who has the time, right? Who has the time to go and apply? And, so it's important that there's also community driven interventions, that this is one piece of the puzzle. Training is only one piece, right? We need so much more. We need community dialogues. We need engagement. There's so many other things that also work. And so we see mental health first aid as just one small part of that broader, impactful way that we can really change and transform the conversation we're having, and make sure that more people have access to the information, and then also later on, if they need those services, that they're also available.
So my question, even though just because I'm an instructor, I'm be like, but it's not my interview, it's Tramaine's interview. The importance of recognizing early warning signs as relates to mental health, suicide, substance use, and how early interventions make a difference for outcomes. Because a lot of times with mental health, my lived experience included, we can sometimes we don't know what to do, or even sometimes when we know what to do, we tend to be reactive versus proactive. So really talking about why is early intervention so important as it relates to outcomes, and what mental health first aid, how mental health first aid ties into that.
I'm going to flip the question to Kia because you said it. Because I'm an instructor, I probably could answer. Like, go
No.
ahead. No, come on. You said you were an instructor.
I was like, you can't be turning it on me, putting me on blast.
It was an opportunity. It was an opportunity. It wasn't on blast. No, I think.
Let's see.
Go ahead. Go. You start and I'll finish. How about that?
Okay. You'll back me
I'll
up.
back you
okay.
up. I got you.
So early intervention, I believe on average, and Tramaine, you could, if I get the stat wrong, correct me. I think people on average takes about 10 years to get mental health treatment. And so if people have the tools as relates to mental health first aid, we can get people connected earlier. And I often think about myself. I started struggling with suicidal thoughts around 11 years old in middle school. I did not get help until my early 20s, which would put me in that 10-year mark. So think about if someone had cancer for 10 years, they probably would die within that time frame. So to me, when you're talking about early intervention, the faster people get connected to services, the better the outcome. So I don't know if you want to add to that.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Very good. I couldn't have said it better myself. I love it. What I love about what you said, T-Kea, is it's not just the fact that, okay, we can get people connected to help. In a 10-year period, maybe help comes in a different way because the symptoms and the impact of those symptoms are not as severe because we didn't wait. Maybe I might not have to go through therapy, but I can have someone in my family have the tools to have a good conversation, and I can work through my challenges when I'm younger, when I'm in middle school, when I'm in high school, when I can have that conversation. I have trusted adults around me, and it may not escalate to the point where I have to go get services, or maybe I do. And maybe we as a family get to go and get that support or find other avenues, whether that's group support or group dynamics that we're connected to. When I say group dynamics, what I mean is community healing, right? That's been
Mm-hmm.
a very, very wonderful topic. There's so many folks in this space, so many organizations that are having that conversation. I'm so excited that that's happening because we know that communities have the power within them to heal themselves. If that's the case, I think that early intervention helps to support that and helps to support that healing process happening in a way that resonates with that specific community, that resonates with that specific individual or that specific family. And I think that early intervention is not just important just so people can get into treatment. I think it's important to decrease the likelihood that the symptoms get so severe that that's needed, right? Because I think that that's
Mm-hmm.
part of what we teach in mental health first aid. As T-Kea, you said absolutely correctly,
Mm-hmm.
is to make sure that when we recognize something, we act, number one, we support that person, but we give them the appropriate level of support and suggest the appropriate approach to take and appropriate for that situation specifically. So for instance, if I'm dealing with something and I need help, it may not be that I, use the same tool for every time that I'm dealing with my own emotions. There might be different tools for different times.
I wish I had Algie next to me. He's sitting over there. He's sitting over there. He sit on my desk over there. But
I love it. I love it.
Algie is the mascot. He's the koala, you know.
And I love that you
But when
said
you
koala,
what?
and not bear. Thank you. Koala is
Oh,
a marsupial.
oh.
Just needed to.
No, that's because Australia, right? That's
Australia,
how
there it is.
Australia,
There it
right?
is.
So yeah.
Absolutely. I love it.
But when you said something, it made me think about even in terms of preventative care.
Hmm.
And I know mental health first aid, of course, is best as an early intervention. So you're talking about because not every person who is struggling with their mental health needs to see a therapist. You spoke about community healing. One of the things that we do at Black People Die by Suicide too is our support groups. That's what you're talking about when you're talking about community healing. And I always try to let people know like therapy is great, but not every person actually needs to see a therapist. There are, self help and other, support strategies that people can use. Play on words, right? So there are tons of things that people can do, and so I'm I think it's important to have that conversation so people can see that healing and wellness is so broad and is self defined.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm really happy that you mentioned family sort of as part of that healing process. Um, Intergenerational trauma is something we wanted to touch on a little bit with you as well, because we know that's something that really plays a part in a lot of families, particularly for Black people. Um, if you could explain how you think intergenerational trauma sort of plays a role in mental health, and also how becoming a mental health first aider could help combat that.
Yeah. Oh goodness, what a question. um, so what I will say is that this concept of intergenerational trauma has everything to do with trauma that's passed down, right? Generation. And in a lot of experiences that we might have, we are unknowingly passing this trauma, right? Based on how we engage, what we do talk about, what we don't talk about, how we address and deal with challenges, how we talk about ourselves, our self talk, how we talk about others, like all of these little social cues that we get over time. And for me, I'm not a clinician. Like I said, I took the administrative route and the education route when it comes to mental health and what I focus on. I will say, but one of the things that we make sure we talk about is trauma inside of mental health first aid, and how that shows up for each community will be different. If we think of not only Black people here, but across the diaspora who might have experienced different impacts at different times in history, and have experienced and their families experienced things like maybe immigrating to the United States, maybe not necessarily those that might be adult descendants of slaves or individuals who have had enslaved ancestry. So those experiences themselves kind of show up in how we do what we do day to day. And it's I won't say automatic, but it's not maybe as conscious. It's not front of mind, right? And so I think that one of the things when we think about trauma, um, being hypersensitive, making being very aware of how our environment really is affecting us, right? And I don't want to. I don't. Hypersensitive is not the word I was looking for. I think I was looking for um, just the acute sense of everything in your surroundings, being on 10, if you will, being on edge, right? And I think that those kinds of experiences themselves, being afraid of failing, right? Those that's for me, that's how it shows up, right? It's not necessarily something that we address in very specific ways, in a very prescriptive way. That's what I want to say, a very prescriptive way. But it is about really addressing trauma and trauma response and how that can show up differently for every individual. And just because we use the term intergenerational trauma, it might look different for each person. And so, what we teach specifically in mental health first aid is to take that approach. And you might have heard this term, what happened to you versus what's wrong with you, right? And when we think about that, we think about, supporting people where they are with their experiences and letting folks be experts in their own experience and not necessarily attempting to say, well, intergenerational trauma should look like this in your experience because you're part of this community. And I think that that's for me anything that I hear or learn by the folks who do this, the wonderful research in this area, you read it and then you think about, okay, well, how does that really apply to me or to my family, or how is this showing up? And I think the acknowledgement that that exists, the acknowledgement that trauma is real, that trauma does exist, that intergenerational trauma is just because it's not as tangible, that it is something that impacts people day to day, and treating people as if you care about them, their feelings and their emotions, and making sure that you're not negatively uh, impacting them with your words and how you phrase things and paying attention to that. I think it's just how we really support individuals through our content, is making sure that we have that skill, we practice that skill, and that folks can have that information as they go throughout their day to day so that they're not unknowingly causing harm to other people.
Thank you for that.
Yes, you hit on so many things, and I was thinking, I think one of the ways mental health first aid also addresses this is when you're talking about, like, for instance, there's an exercise that we do in mental health first aid is like what's helpful uh, versus what's not helpful, or what listening non-judgmentally looks like, and what it doesn't. I think it also addresses it in that way, because sometimes we feel like we're we may or may not realize it, like we're being dismissive, like you're fine, like, just, and it's not really helpful to the person. I had someone tell me, they can't, they don't feel comfortable, going to, their own parents. There are multiple people who tell me that. They're like, I can't even go to my own parents because, sometimes with Black people, I know, yes, we are resilient and we are amazing, but and I get there's and like intergenerational trauma behind that, because previous generations didn't have the luxury that we have. So I get that, and I want to acknowledge and still honor previous generations, but also realizing by not acknowledging where youth or just where we are today is also detrimental. And I remember someone saying, like, why do we feel like the rates are going up among Black people for suicide or Black youth? And the more I sat and thought about it, I said, because our current generation can no longer hold what the previous generations have been holding. And so I feel like with mental health first aid, just even having the right language to support someone, I feel like that is also how it addresses intergenerational trauma.
That's great. That's awesome to hear. I love that connection that you just made. It made me think about, you know, um, a lot of what we focus on is language and what to say and how to say it, and how to do that for yourself. Not to say we're prescriptive and say you must say it this way, but finding that
Right.
language that resonates with that person. It's that person first and person centered approach, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's a lot of what you're referencing as well. So yeah, I didn't think about that connection to the intergenerational piece, but that's really really helpful and resonant for me. Yeah.
So, looking forward, what are some goals that you have for the future of mental health first aid? And where do you see this program going in terms of making an impact or continuing to make an impact, rather, on the state of mental health here in America?
So we've had tremendous momentum over the last several years. We have a lot of new friends after 2020 because I think people woke up and they're like, wait, what? We need to talk about well-being. We got to talk about it at work, which we have a workplace program. We have to talk about it in schools, which we have teen mental health first aid, right? We got to talk about it in communities. And so we have adult and youth mental health first aid. We also have content that's for older adults and higher ed and law enforcement and fire and EMS, right? It's so many communities. We've translated in a ton of languages thus far, which we're really excited about Spanish, and we just added Korean, Khmer, and Chinese. And so those opportunities to make content that and training that actually speaks specifically to where a person is in their own communities is something that I see in the future us doing even more of. Specifically, the scenarios and the ways that we're approaching these conversations, but also how are we reflecting new data, new information? How are we reflecting new ways of being within communities? And how are we partnering with communities to develop that, right? Making sure that community is community led and community driven in terms of how we're approaching this information. So that's one piece. Now, then really tangibly, uh, I'm from Philly through and through. Everybody meets me. They know where I'm from because I tell everybody I'm from Philly because, I mean, I'm from Philly, right? So because of that, there's like 1.5 million people in Philly. That's why I started doing mental health first aid. That's great. And so we've trained double that, right, across the country. But that's one city that we've kind of doubled the number. We have a lot of people in this country. And so we've got a lot of ground to cover. I believe mental health first aid is a program that helps us be better humans, better connectors, better individuals in our workplaces. And I think that anybody who can take it should take it so that they have that information, just like you would if you needed to save somebody's life when it comes to CPR and first aid. You want those skills. You want to know that you'll feel comfortable when you need it, when you need to call on those skills. I think everybody is a big number. So if we think about it, I think that we've at National Council thought about, okay, what does it mean for someone to have someone in their circle that has this training? And that number looks like 1 in 15. So if 1 in 5 of us has a mental health challenge or can experience one in a given year, that's what the data show, then we believe 1 in 15 of us should have the skills to support somebody. And so that number, when you add it all up based on the population in the US, is about 22 million people. And so that's our goal. That's what I see. I see us hitting that number and it going beyond that number, and getting to a point where, of course, we talk about this, where it's not a surprise that we have this conversation in any community, a community that I came from, the communities that are reflected in the work that we get to do every day, and that there is no shame and no stigma in being wholly focused on being a whole person, and that includes addressing your mental health.
Prayerfully, everyone who is listening and watching this episode who is not a mental health first aider will feel so
Right.
compelled to join. And if they do, which would be wonderful, Tramaine, how can they link up with Mental Health First Aid, the National Council, and learn more about the program?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I can't train everybody, so y'all gonna have to.
Neither can
Have to
I.
take
I'm
some of
still
the
an
pressure off to
instructor.
Kia.
I love it. I love it, T-Kea. Not everybody, but you train a lot of somebodies, okay? So we
I
love that.
do, I do.
We love it, and we're so grateful. Um, they anybody who wants to take a course can go to mhfa.org. They don't even have to remember all the letters, right? Just mhfa.org. And type in your zip code, type in your city and state, find an instructor near you, reach out to an instructor, or look for a class that'll show up where you can join a class in your neighborhood or a virtual class nationally. We now do virtual training. And it's one day of training where you can get that information and be able to support someone. And I just am so grateful that both of you are part of this community. Like it really is a movement, y'all. We're out here trying to, that with your podcast, the work that you're doing is just amazing to make sure that we have this conversation. And so I'm so incredibly grateful for this discussion today.
Thank you so much. We're grateful to have you. To anyone listening and watching, I'll have the link in the description box or the show notes for you all to check out Mental Health First Aid. Tramaine, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you
Yes.
coming to tell us about this wonderful program that T-Kea and I believe so strongly in. And I'm just going to continue to encourage everyone who I meet and talk with about mental health to take mental health first aid. And it's beneficial to everyone, people in the community, clinicians,
Mhm.
doesn't matter. Anyone can take it. You will find benefit from it for sure.
Yes. Any last words you want to share, Tremaine, before we part ways?
Partners. Um, I will say just thank you again. I think that we have hit a place in our existence where we really have the opportunity to be more connected, more aligned, more aware that we are all human beings trying to figure it out. And it's no shame in doing that by getting the help that you need. And so I thank you for having this space, for having this podcast and the organization around Black people die by suicide too, because that is true. And even just saying the name of your organization kind of shares with someone that it's okay to talk about when they're not okay. So really appreciate you both.
So every episode, we shine a spotlight on an individual who has passed away from suicide, just as a way of remembering the legacy that they left behind. We think it's important that we talk about this because sometimes I feel like people don't really understand that folks are dying. And suicide is something that we're passionate about trying to prevent. And I feel like sharing these stories really makes this real. It makes this impactful. So we just want to honor their memory. So today we are doing Derek Cummings. He was a former United States Marine. He was from Ohio and he died by suicide on August 8th, 2003, at the age of 30. There was a newspaper article about him that I read, and his mother, Denise Holcomb, she founded a nonprofit called Removing the Stigma, based out of Cleveland, Ohio, and it's trying to help individuals who are struggling with their mental health and suicidal ideation. And I will leave a link to both the news story and the nonprofit so that you all can check that out, especially if you are in the Ohio area. And for today's resource, of course, the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, which Tramaine is a part of. It's an organization that drives policy and social change on behalf of more than 3,400 mental health and substance treatment organizations and more than 10 million children, adults, and families that they serve. They advocate for policies to ensure equitable access to high quality services, and they built the capacity of mental health and substance use treatment organizations, and they promote a greater understanding of mental well being as a core component of comprehensive health and health care. So I will leave a link for you all in the description if you're interested in checking out more information on the National Council and if you're interested in mental health first aid.
Yes, and I will also add the National Council also offers other trainings as well outside of mental health first aid. They're also the creators of WHAM, which is Whole Health Action Management as well. That's something where I think we're going to figure out how to implement for Black people die by suicide too, because I feel like it has a great, there's a lot of overlap with peer support in that. So they definitely have other trainings as well. And now for our community change maker, I'm excited about this amazing person who is also a mental health first aid instructor. And this is like my ride or die mental health first aid instructor. Like Jordan's my ride or die like friend, but for mental health first aid instructing, T-Kea Boykin, she has a passion for helping and serving others. She's a clinical social worker. As I mentioned, she also teaches mental health first aid. And her professional experiences in the areas of higher education, treatment, foster care, criminal justice, medical social work, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and accessibility. Um, and she also actually, well, I will say this, she also serves a lot of clients as relates in a variety of areas. But what I love, one of the things that I also love is that she is also our recording secretary. So she serves on our executive board, and she helps us with really making sure everything stays on track as relates to our board meetings. And so she's been a board member for a few months now, and she just came in taking charge and just making sure that things are running smoothly. So shout out to T-Kea. We're going to have to let her know, girl, you are the community change maker on this segment.
Yes, T-Kea, we so appreciate everything that you're doing for the organization. She was also one of my trainers along with T-Kea. So thank you so much for all that you're doing to give back not only to our organization but also to mental health in general. All right, so the next segment, the foolishness. Are y'all ready?
Oh
Oh my
my
God.
God. The Oh My God segment. Tell our listeners, well, new listeners who don't know what the Oh My God segment is.
So, as a person who is dealing with mental health, living with a mental health condition, you are probably going to hear some wild things from others who think that they're helping, and they may or may not mean well, but it doesn't make the comment any crazier, like less crazy for real. Because, like, why would you say some of these things? I don't know. So, for today, you don't look like someone who's mentally ill. And I'm like, do people that have mental illnesses look a particular way? I don't know if people think like you'll be someone that's maybe homeless or you would be unkept. And maybe that is the case for some people, but like
Right.
it affects individuals all differently. There's probably someone that you know who is the most polished individual, not a hair out of place. Like they appear to have everything together on the outside, but internally they're struggling. So mental health doesn't have just one way that it presents itself, I guess.
Or mental
So
illness, rather.
yes, I'm sorry.
Because, no, just because I feel like sometimes, for the sake of educational purposes, I think sometimes we use the language interchangeably, and I think we know what it is. But for people
Mhm.
who may not have the educational background, so mental health overall is just your current state, like your emotional and your psychological state. You can currently have great mental health, or you can have poor mental health.
Mhm.
But then mental illness is diagnosable when you're living with a mental health condition that causes significant impairment in your ability to be able to function doing day-to-day tasks, work, cooking, cleaning, being able to maintain relationships. There's some sort of significant impairment, and there are certain criteria that you have to meet in order to have a mental health diagnosis or mental illness. But overall, mental health itself is not a diagnosis, just for people who don't know.
Thank you. As soon as I said it, I was like, that's not the word I meant to say. I was trying not to interrupt my flow of thought, but I appreciate you, T-Kea, for providing everyone with that education who otherwise did not know that. So yeah, you'll hear some interesting things on your journey, and don't let those things get you down. I think pretty much we've heard it all at this point.
Right.
Someone actually said something to me earlier this week or late last week.
Yes, you
I don't
see,
remember
Jordan, don't
what
tell me,
they
y'all, because I'll
said.
be in jail.
Oh, it was relatively benign. It was nothing like just completely out of pocket. But I remember thinking to this lady, she meant so well, but that did not come across that did not come across like she thought it did. And I have to remember what it was that she said, but I immediately thought of, "Oh my god."
Yeah,
That's
we gonna have
exactly
to
what
bring
was
it
in my
back
head.
next time for another episode. When you remember, put that for the "Oh my God" segment.
Yes, I was like, "What, huh?" So, yeah, you'll hear some interesting things. So for our self-care segment, oh man, y'all know this is usually a hard one for me, but today not so bad. We like to sort of talk about what it is that we're planning to do for self-care over the
Or
next
currently doing.
or currently doing. You
Hmm.
know, just sort of check in and make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and trying to, just the work of helping others. You have to make sure that you're also sort of filling your own cup. You know what I mean? So this self-care check-in, we just like to make sure that we have a little something that we're doing to keep ourselves healthy. And for me, I'm planning on doing some like affirmations, I guess. I have bought a little journal and I'm going to fill it up, or at least the page up, with some positive things about myself. Because I had an experience earlier this week where I was in a group setting for mental health, and everyone in the group had to like go around the room and say some positive things about each other, because oftentimes we don't recognize these things in ourselves. And so when they got around to me and people were talking about how they perceived me, and they had such wonderful things to say, and I was sitting there like feeling so devastated that I couldn't like readily see what they could see in myself. And I've been thinking about that pretty much all week. So I'm going to try to write some nice things about myself, because I want to see me like
Jordan.
other people see me. And it's a struggle for me. I'm not gonna lie. Takia's about to fuss at me, but it's a
No,
struggle.
I'm fussing because no, we gonna say you're going to do. Don't say try. Try. You either gonna do it or you're not
Oh,
gonna do it. You gonna do it.
yes.
And I'm gonna make
Yes.
sure you do it. Sorry,
Yes.
y'all. I gotta sometimes jump on Jordan's back.
And Takia is my accountability partner for real, because sometimes your girl struggles over here. But yes, no, I'm going to write some positive things about myself. It's always so jarring whenever I've had that experience, which happens a lot in the particular setting that I was in. Like, go around and, tell other people your experience of them. And I'm like, I don't understand what y'all see, because I'm not seeing what y'all see about me. But yeah, I'm going to try to practice being a little bit more kind to myself, because I really, really do struggle with a lot of negative um, self talk. And those things kind of like will wind up manifesting in ways that you don't necessarily want them to. Because if you believe in yourself, prayerfully good things will follow. But if you're always kind of counting yourself out or selling yourself short, um, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't bode well for your mental health. So I'm going to try. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to practice being kinder to myself, and that's going to be my self-care. Takia, what about you?
Good, good. If y'all notice, we didn't talk about like nails, hair, or anything, because I want people to realize like how you talk to yourself and the thoughts that you think about yourself is also self-care, but people wouldn't associate that with self-care. I feel like we're in alignment, sis, because you talked about affirmations, and I'm going to share. I'm going to text you what what I've been listening to all week. I've been listening to an artist, and all their music is all affirmations. It's a Black man.
Okay.
Um, he also, his name's Londrell. He also has meditation, like guided meditation. But then he also, his music overall is just about like operating and having a high frequency. He has a meditation called like depression release, or like something for anxiety. He have a song called antidepressant. He has a song called Black Girl Magic. Like, I've been listening to him all week, so that's been my self-care, because I was having this conversation with someone, and I feel like this is a topic we could bring up on the podcast later, but like talking about neuroplasticity. And basically, it's like what we're feeding to ourselves, it really does have if we're constantly feeding all the negative, but if we change that to something positive, it creates new neural pathways. So, like, we really have the power to heal ourselves. And so, like, for me, lately, I have been, been extremely stressed. I've been trying, I've been, if I'm being honest, I'm in a space where I'm drained and I might be burned out. Um, and so I've also been taking a step back from a little bit from things. And so I've been like, okay, I've been checking in with myself. And I said to Kia, what is it that you need what is it that you need in the moment? And so in the process of that, I have also been making sure that I'm not isolating, because I'm drained. I feel myself, and y'all know we transparent on this podcast. So I had this feeling in my body that felt so comfortable, not comfortable, that's not the word, familiar. And this feeling that I had experienced, it brought me back to the feeling that I had in my body when I experienced depression. And for me, that was a warning sign to be like, uh-oh, where does it feel in your body? Not necessarily people automatically associate mood, but for me, it was a precursor saying like, hey, if you don't do something, you're going to be in trouble. And so, because I'm currently, I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast, but I know I said it to Jordan. I am going on about 7 weeks where I went to my nurse practitioner and I asked her to lower my dosage. And so I know sometimes that could, tip the scale over a bit as relates to like my mood and my baseline, if you will. And so I've been so intentional about making sure that I don't that I don't stop doing the things that help me feel well. I said that I'm giving myself like a 2 to 3 week period to see like how I feel, because there's no shame in if I have to go back to increasing my dosage, but right now I'm on the lowest dosage. But I feel like this is a good space to be in, if you will. I did air quotes. People listening can't see that. But I feel like it's a quote unquote good space to be in, because this is the time to be like, use those tools. Because if I stop using the tools that work, then I know that I'm going to revert back and I'm going to be in trouble. So like, for instance, yes, I go to the gym, but when I start struggling, I stop going to the gym. And I literally know once I stop, because for me, my fitness classes help me with the mental component, because I'm releasing stress. And also, when you get physical movement, as y'all have heard on this podcast, it help increase serotonin, dopamine, that helps to lift your mood. So that's one. I'm getting the mental effects. I'm also getting the physical components. When you're talking about working out or physical movement, helps you to have a healthy heart. Helps you as you age to be able to move and not be so stiff as you. So like that. But then also the social component. I live alone. So if I stop going to the gym, all three of those boxes automatically get checked off. And so I told one of my friends at the gym, like, yeah, I'm starting to see something. So make sure I'm getting to the gym. And so that's kind of like the space that I've been in. So I've been saying, like, okay, who am I surrounding myself with as well? So I've been also I have been intentional about surrounding myself around people who replenish my cup, because I feel like I have a straw in my back and somebody just sucked it all out. It ain't there. It's like when you at the end of the cup, you're like, trying to suck the end of the cup out, trying to get and it's like, it ain't no more there. Stop drinking it. There's nothing in there. So that's kind of where I am. And so for self-care, say all of that in a long way. For self-care, for me, I've been listening to affirmations. I've been asking people in my life to hold me accountable to make sure that I continue to do the things that keep me well. I've been doing that. I mentioned the affirmations piece, and then there was something else that I've also been doing. But overall, those are the things that, because I'm not down and out, I'm not there, but for me, my goal is to be proactive versus reactive. So I'm like, T-Kea, what is it that you have to do? Because I don't want to go back. I told my therapist, I was like, get somebody else to do it. I was like, like, because I have been experienced, the past few months have been great for me, and I feel like it's the best that I have been in, honestly, my whole life. I'm like, no. Like, before, I remember telling my therapist that depression used to feel like a warm blanket because it was so comfortable. So I didn't kind of want to get out of it. But now that I've experienced, like, wow, life can be really great. And I ain't say perfect, because it ain't perfect. There's a lot of stuff in my life that I could complain about, that I could sulk in, but I'm making the decision not to. And I think in this season, I'm starting to realize, like, and I don't know if this sounds weird or not, but I'm starting to realize, like, how much power I actually have to heal myself. I'm starting to realize that. And so that's really why I've just been being very intentional, even down to, we're talking about like eating. There was a therapist that talked on social media about how when we're struggling with our mental health, a lot of times we go for the processed foods and like things that are high in carbs, which there's a thing called gut and brain health. And those things actually start to make your mood worse. So for me, yes, I'm vegan, but there's tons of processed vegan food that I tend to gravitate to when I'm struggling. But I've made a conscious effort to being like, no, we're focusing on whole foods right now. So like my smoothies, or like less processed foods. And I've also been making that a focus as well, focusing on more whole food. So I've kind of been doing a lot, if you will, as it relates to self-care. Just because I'm in a very fragile is not the word that I want to use. I'm not in a fragile space, but it's more so like the yellow light, like, hey girl,
Mm-hmm.
so that's me trying to be like, yeah, no, we ain't doing that. I told get somebody else to do it, because I ain't going back. So that's where I've been. I know I had a long answer, but I've been doing a lot of work as it relates to self-care.
Great job, T-Kea. I'm so proud of you. Making sure you're taking care of yourself. I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, man, it's so important to make sure that you're okay ultimately, because if you're not, it's hard to help other people.
It makes me feel like a fraud if I'm out preaching self-care and I'm not doing it myself. Like, how can we tell somebody to do something, then we don't be doing it? So that also holds me accountable, is because we have a public platform. I'm not about to be a hypocrite. So having this platform and this organization actually also holds me accountable.
Well said. All right, y'all. So make sure y'all follow us on social media, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. We don't know what's happening with TikTok. Definitely follow us on any of the listening platforms that you may be tuned into: Spotify, Apple, iHeart, etc., etc. If you have any comments or any feedback, we would love to hear from you. Leave us a comment, a like. We really appreciate it. Yeah, we're around if you need us. And
yes, by the time y'all hear this, we may be on other platforms, but because our communications committee is in the process of launching in the next month, launching the other platforms. So those are in the works. We will be launching we'll be relaunching Facebook because it was hacked. So we'll be relaunching Facebook, and we'll also be launching LinkedIn as well. So our communications committee it's in the works. So by the time y'all hear this, it probably will have launched, and we will be sure to add that to the show notes.
Yes, great. All right, so for today's moment of inspiration, listen, if you want to help make a positive impact toward mental health, there are wonderful trainings that you can take, like mental health first aid. If this is something that is new to you, something that's foreign, you don't really understand a lot about mental health, this training is a great place to start. Um, you will learn so much. Signs that someone's considering suicide, ways that you can support individuals who may be struggling with their mental health, the different kinds of support that you can receive. It's
Or
just a
offer.
wonderful, or offer, yes. It's a wonderful starting place. It's a wonderful refresher. Again, even if you are a clinician or someone who works in mental health, it certainly does not hurt. You will definitely pick something up from it. And just know that there are, organizations like the National Council that are really out here trying to help people improve their mental health and live the best possible life that they can. And to me, that's inspiring. So we're going to continue to see the number of people who are getting trained grow, which is really exciting. And that'll just be more and more people that can be helped and lives that can potentially be saved. So, yeah.
Yes. Thank you all for listening to another episode of Black People Die by Suicide 2. And we'll catch y'all on the next episode.